Good morning, everybody. This is, once again, if you just joined us, and I'm still admitting some people as I'm talking. If you just joined us, my name is Ian Driver. I'm the Education and Engagement Manager here at the Performing Arts Centre. We're going to get started. We have some people who will be coming in, and I will welcome them and bring them in as we start. But I have a few logistical things, so I'm going to start with that. I'm set up this call today, and I'm sharing the Zoom hosting responsibilities with our host, Seth Soloway, this morning. So thank you again for joining us for this August edition of our monthly coffee hour conversation. We look forward to sharing as many voices and opinions as possible over the next 45 minutes. But before we start, here are some tips and requests to help us guide the conversation. Firstly, we ask that you keep your microphones muted unless you're talking directly to the group. It just prevents distraction with ambient noise. Please use the chat icon to raise your hand if you'd like to speak. You can find the option in the control dots at the top right-hand corner of the texting box if you're new to Zoom. Seth will see the hand raised and call on you to make your comment or ask your question. You can unmute your microphone at that time. If you'd rather ask a question or respond by texting in the chat box, feel free to do so. Seth, as your host, will see the question and share it with the group. I'm just going to take a pause here to admit a few more people. If you'd like to share any links or info during the session, feel free to post links in the chat text, and we'll be sharing contact information with our moderators or about our moderators after the event. Our marketing director, Mara Rupners, will be live tweeting during the event. To participate in the conversation, just tag @PurchasePAC or use the hashtag PAC Coffee Hour. I'll put those in the chat in just a moment. And finally, we are recording this morning's conversation. If you have any questions or concerns about our future use of the recording, please don't hesitate to let me know, and I'll provide my email address in the chat box. Just before I do the introductions, I'm just going to go and let in a few more guests. As it's a registration event, I have to admit them. So without any further ado, let me introduce our moderators this morning. These are very brief introductions. They could be much longer, so bear with me as I do very brief introductions. I'd like to start with Margaret Selby. Margaret Selby, with an eye for cultivating exceptional talent, Margaret manages the careers of major choreographers, dance companies, theatrical events, supporting performance and touring around the world. Having built a successful artist management division from the ground up, her personal care and vision combined with long-standing international relationships and astute business skills make her an invaluable partner of artists and presenters. Drawing upon her lifelong passion for dance, theatre, music and film, in-depth working knowledge of creative development and performance, Margaret has a keen eye on today's performance landscape and the care needed for live performance to thrive as we head into the 21st century. Next, we have Alan Moon. Alan has toured nationally and internationally with Mehmet Sanda Dance Company and Diavolo, but for the past 13 years, he has worked at David Lieberman Artist Representatives, currently as Director of Touring, where he has booked national and international tours for the Merce Cunningham Dance Company, Kronos Quartet, Circus Oz, Diavolo, Bang on a Can All-Stars, It Gets Better, amongst other things. Moon co-founded and serves as Artistic Director of Santa Ana Sights, a series that presents performance in public and private spaces in Santa Ana, California. And Alan serves on the CSU Summer Arts Advisory Board and a committee member of the International Society for the Performing Arts. Thirdly, we have Simon Shaw. Simon founded Shaw Entertainment Group in 2008 to nurture, present, and distribute dynamic artistic work. The company's work is based on the beliefs that the live performing arts provide a unique vehicle for community and personal growth, that the artistic voice is one that should be honored and cultivated, and that the work of connecting venue and performance with integrity is paramount. With 20 years of experience on both sides of the Atlantic as a booking agent, promoter, producer, and director of programming, Simon has a rare insight into the world of presenting live performing arts. Simon also serves on the board and executive committee of the International Performing Arts for Youth, IPE, and is active in presenting and touring networks. And to kick us off, and to lead the discussion this morning, Seth Soloway, Director of the Performing Arts Center here at Purchase College. Seth holds a BFA in stage directing from Marymount Manhattan College, an MFA in Performing Arts Management from Brooklyn College, and since then, he's held numerous producing and managing positions within the performing arts world. So as I admit some more people, turn off my camera. Seth, it's over to you.
Thanks very much, Ian. You know, every time we do this, I think to tell you that you don't have to read my bio, and then I always forget to do it. So maybe next time. But welcome, everyone. We're really glad to be here. We're really glad to partner with New York State presenters to present these coffee hour conversations. I want to tell you first on a hopeful note that due to the way things have progressed in New York, although the theater isn't filled with people, Ian and I are actually here live from our concert hall. This is not a virtual background. We are socially distanced. We wore our masks right up until we came on. And we've got some of our production crew here as well who helped us look good and sound good and had some fun with some props. So so we're very glad to be here in the theater and bring you the energy of the theater. What we want to do today is exactly what the title says. We want to have coffee like we would and have a conversation. I'm looking around at this group of familiar faces, and I'm reminded that if the world were normal in a week or two, we'd all have had coffee or meals in person at the various conferences that we would have attended. This is a kind of not the best substitute, but I'm very glad to see everyone. And actually, in fact, I'm going to be in trouble with Ian because he just got promoted to engagement director, and he took the job because I told him I would take him to San Diego. So it's been a little bit of a problem for me. But we're here, we have our coffee. I have this funky mug from my mom, and we just want to have a conversation. Our goal here was just to build community, to come up with answers as a group, or at least commiserate as a group. So this is not a webinar or about purchase in any way, although we've put together a panel of experts. That's really just to guide the conversation. We really want to hear from everyone and have a really fluid and solid conversation that we hope gives us some hope at the end, or at least gives us some new ideas. We wanted to give voice to every group, so we have curated this in sort of a series with no particular order in mind. But 2 months ago, we heard from institutional leaders. A month ago, we heard from artists. And the next logical step was to hear from our partners in the agents and management world. So we've got a good group here, and I want to kick it off. Since we're having coffee in our concert hall, and Ian and I are used to having coffee in our concert hall from the wings as we watch our arts education programs that we can't do right now. I'm going to go ahead and start with Simon, and we're going to lead in with all the same questions, and then I've got plenty of questions that we came up with, but I'll can them as soon as we start hearing from you. So Simon, what we're going to ask everyone to start is with the title of the conversation. What have you found the role of the agent to be during this COVID-19 crisis? And maybe an extension of that, what did you think in March that's changed? What did you do that worked, that didn't work? How's it been?
It's been traumatic, a roller coaster, I would say. I think we've all experienced the same thing, where for me, it was the 12th of March. We'd been watching COVID coming and seeing our Chinese colleagues shut down, and knew it would impact us in some way, but had no grasp of the effect it would have. And on March 12th, we had 3 national tours that had been on the road for months and had extensive routes booked, and they turned around and went home. And all of the artists who do runouts, their dates were getting pulled and cancelled. And, you know, I think we all went through that feeling of, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Do we try and reschedule? We rescheduled some dates into the fall of 21. We cancelled some other things. We talked about the spring of 20. But the fall of 20, but that's obviously gone by the wayside. And once we got over the shock, we tried to support our artists, tried to communicate with our presenting colleagues. And what do I think is different now? I don't think anyone realized quite how long it would go on. And, you know, where is the glimmer of light? Be my question.
Right. Well, thank you. I guess I'll go Margaret next. The same question for you.
Okay. Well, from March through August, we had 147 engagements that had to be postponed or canceled. And some of them were really things that have been worked on for years, like Pacific Northwest Ballet going to the Coke, or Ballet BC doing a week at the Joan Sutherland at the Sydney Opera House, plus plenty of other dates. So, you know, we keep pushing things out further and further, trying to accommodate presenters and artists. And now, you know, there are a few things that are still pending for this fall, and it's really, you know, the companies, dance companies don't want to, you know, or they can't, they don't feel comfortable working together because they're so close. And so we're trying to figure out, you know, what they can do to keep in shape and get ready for when they're going to be back out on the road, which probably won't be for another year, the way it's looking.
Thank you. And Alan, and before we go to Alan, I also want to commend Alan for being up with us and prepared to speak this early, since he is in California. So, so Alan, tell us about what's how's it been for you? What has the role been? How's it shifted? How's it changed? Any success stories?
Success stories? Well, I know Margaret and Simon and probably everyone else on the call when, you know, the trauma hit, and it has still remained with a lot of uncertainty in the future. You asked about the role of the agent, and I think the role of the agent right now is maybe the specific tactics are different, but really the role to me is still the same. Our company is artist representatives in the title, but there's also a heavy dose of presenter representatives to communicate the ideas from presenters to artists. And right now there's such a vast disconnect there. So I think it's an ongoing talk between both the artists and the presenters to try and understand what is and isn't working for a presenter right now if they're trying to engage, and then what ideas the artist may have for the presenter to utilize in this next virtual year. So that's sort of the crux, and which is really about me trying to stay in touch with as many presenters and in as many colleagues as possible, and including people on this call as well, other agents, to hear how they're navigating it as well. I've had many a conversation with Margaret throughout this time.
Great, thank you. And so you talked about some of the virtual programming, and obviously there's a lot of feelings about it all across the spectrum of things that we're doing. But one of the things that came up heavy in the last conversation was founding what we're doing virtually and what's valuable to the artist. So can any of you speak about things that you've seen done that are more valuable to the artist than other things?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I think everybody at the beginning was, you know, full force, let's put something online. And I think from many of the conversations I've had with presenters, and I also acknowledge that it has to do with the medium that they're presenting, that it hasn't been a great success. And before I go on, I want to echo what you said at the beginning to everyone else on the call. We want to hear ideas too. We're sort of operating in a bubble like everyone else. So if anyone does have experiences that are particularly dreadful or particularly successful, you know, raise the hand. I'm working on a project out in California where they're just going to film the performance from the artist's hometown, and they're going to pay the fee minus the travel expenses and any hard expenses that would be allocated towards traveling there. So that's something that's very supportive to the artist. There's been a heavy talk around commissioning and supporting new work, which obviously is helpful. And I think as this settles in, I think there's going to be vibrant work being made. And so how can we tap into that creativity?
Margaret?
Well, currently, one of my artists is choreographing a music video, shooting this week and next out in California. There's only 6 performers and the singer on the set, and they're trying to be very careful with COVID, and they actually have masks are part of what the actual wardrobe for the shoot will include. And I have another artist who is Jessica Lang is choreographing out on Pacific Northwest Ballet with 2 pods of 4 dancers each, that some of them are married couples, so it's going to work out. They had to get it approved by AGMA, and they're going to film it in the main hall with no audience, and Jessica's going to direct the filming and deal with the editing, and they're going to stream it only to ticket buyers. It's going to be very limited, and it's the people who have subscriptions and donors, and they're trying to keep that audience engaged. And Jessica's directed 2 other films for ABT, short films, that she actually filmed from her iPhone. And her husband edited them, and they're fantastic. So, you know, artists are doing different things, trying to keep them creative. Parsons, the whole company sheltered in place, and they had 4 weeks of rehearsal, and they're going to go back and do that again. And, you know, it's really about the comfort of the company if they feel like they want to get together. But we're trying to be creative during this time and think about commissioning projects and think about what the world's going to look like when the pandemic's over. It will end. We just have to live through another year of this or so.
Thank you. I'll always remind, I'm happy to keep going with my questions, but we'd love to hear from you. So I'm just going to look at the chat here.
So, Seth.
Sorry?
I just wanted to talk about the digital experiences that my artists have had. You know, everything we do is for young audiences and families. So we've had some success with some streaming of some Dan Zane's concerts. People seem to love Dan, but I've got to book a lot of $1,000 dates to make a living. So that's somewhat of a success. We've had some offers from presenting organizations to support artists in their communities. So that's exciting, and that may be space and time grants, because obviously the space and the time is there. We're encouraging our artists to create virtual residencies that may be of use to presenters coming into the 2021 season.
Great, thank you. So we do have one. So Liz, do you want to unmute and ask your question? That's okay. All right. Like to give voice to everyone.
We caught you. We caught you.
Sorry, I'm dealing with a tree that fell on my father's house, so dealing with insurance issues. I ran into a situation where a presenter just had a change in management, staff, and so forth and so on, and they were trying to do some other things, and I ran into the fact that the artists were very reluctant to put anything out, you know, to create videos that were basically done, say, on iPhones and so forth, rather than doing quality work. And they just said, okay, enough of the bedroom stuff, the living room stuff. We want to put quality out there. But then in order to do that, they're running into extra expenses. And when I heard the comments about, oh, well, we took the travel and the lodging off, well, those should just be converted into the production expenses. Because to make anything of quality that's going to live beyond a single performance, you've got to put quality out there. And the artists are very concerned about that.
As well, they should be. In that instance, actually, what the presenter did was they're investing in a high quality production to be filmed in a theater in New York. And we are going to split, if I want to license it and sell that project, we're going to split it with the presenter. So we're taking out money that just won't be spent. They're putting in additional expenses for the production itself. So it'll be a high quality shoot.
And then the other issue that came up, I should say, is that the presenter asked me to actually curate a virtual series, and they wanted to work with a group that normally comes and does a summer thing in the park, blah, blah, blah. But they're all union musicians. And the union, it came to a point, I think this was maybe in April, where it came to a point where we just had to stop planning anything because suddenly different rates were going to be incorporated, because suddenly when you go from a live performance to a recording, we get different rates, it becomes more expensive, and even the union is just in the process of dealing with all of that, on top of licensing issues in terms of suddenly you go from a performance to syncing music in a video. It's just not, I mean, they're literally, I spent days going through with ASCAP and BMI, and one of my professors from Berklee College of Music, when I took a music law class, on sorting out what licenses we actually needed to cover in making a music video. And it's not as easy as everybody thinks to make sure that everything is covered, and especially when you are working with contemporary musicians who are doing contemporary music that is not their own.
So, Margaret, I wonder if you have any advice. I know you've got some experience with this.
Well, you know, I think what everybody has to realize is streaming costs money, and there are rights involved. And I think I'm very particular with streaming contracts for my artists. They're very limited. The liability of, you know, clearing underlying rights is up to them. I mean, I you know, these rights, it's the Wild West out there, but the music rights are really, they're going to start coming down more and more. One of my artists tried to clear some music rights for streaming, and it was like $20,000. So I think the streaming, it's a case-by-case thing. You have to figure out what your agreement's going to be, how you're going to limit it, and you know what the clearances need to be, and not just the music rights, whoever the performer is, and everything else. With dance, it seems like a lot of times, you know, some presenters just want to put it up there and don't realize it's really the IP of the company. They spent a lot of money to hire a choreographer and rehearse the company and get health insurance for their dancers. And so I'm very particular about streaming. It's, you know, every contract is different. It should be a separate contract to, like, if you had a performance agreement and they want to change it to a streaming one, it's a separate contract. And now a lot of presenters want to do, they want to have the company at half capacity and then stream. And I'm not into it. I'll give you 2 shows, but the streaming thing, in a live performance, there's no quality control. And, you know, with my artist that's in Pacific Northwest Ballet right now, she's directing it. They're going to edit it. And when it's finished, it's going to be a very limited stream. And they're doing it very high quality.
And it also seems that it's a huge education process in dealing with presenters, because many of them just have no idea about copyright law.
Right.
And licensing.
Well, they don't want to.
Right. But it suddenly becomes very complicated. And so I literally had to step back with this one presenter to go, okay, let's take a break and let's reconvene in a couple of weeks because there's an education process here. And this is what we've done. But it's mind-boggling.
Yes.
Yeah, as a presenter, I think so too. I've heard some things that don't have the knowledge that I think we need. And I'll come back around a little bit to that, but I do want to go to Mike's important question in the chat, because I think it ties right in to what work gets done into survival. And one of the reasons that we wanted to do this, the same as we did with the artists and the presenters, was to hear about what people are doing and how we can help to make sure we all come out the other side of this. So Mike, do you want to jump on and pose your question?
Sure. I'm
sorry, Mark, in the chat. We're trying to do 17 things at once.
It's okay. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious how the agencies have shifted what they're doing in order to look out for their own survival, because it seems like there are unlimited number of things that the agencies can do that essentially, when we're doing rescheduling, you can basically do the work 3 and 4 times and eventually not get paid at all.
Correct.
Or shift to a live stream and make a fifth of what you might have made. It's all those things. And at some point we're having to look and say, artists want us to do stuff for them. It's like, we can do that and spend several hours and make $30, or work on something else, or just every once in a while take a day off. It's like trying to balance all that stuff. We want to be of service to the artist, but not at the risk of not having a future to come back to. Because this thing, this is going to take years to get back to any kind of normalcy, I think. So I'm just curious how you all have dealt with it. We've had some successes in small ways, but it's not enough to sustain us. I'm curious how you're all looking at it from that point of view.
I'm happy to answer that. I took a PPP loan to pay my employee, and that's been and gone. And I took an EIDL loan, and we're battling down the hatches and trying to work out a way to get some commission between now and next September. And I promise once I've worked it out, I'll let you all know.
Alan, you had a point. I don't know if it's related to this or...
It's not really related to that specific point, but I'll echo Simon. Same thing. I imagine, again, everyone on this call has a similar version. Going back to that first question of what is the role, and I called Margaret this morning. I said, Margaret, we can't forget this. To me, this really is one of the more important things. We can get tied up in the streaming issues and copyright and licensing. It's so complicated. But I think we all need to advocate vociferously a reconstruction of the payment system and have progress payments on all of our fees, because that's just not working. And to expect an artist and an ensemble and the representatives to get the full amount of a fee the day after a performance doesn't take into account the needs of the artist, as they have health insurance to pay them, they have administrative structure, they have advancing. And I think we have to figure out a way to make that happen and not accept the standard university, well, we don't do advance payments, because that's not what we're proposing. We're proposing to get paid to support a company that is bringing work there. They don't.
Hi.
Go, Margaret.
Well, no, Dance USA is working on this as we speak, and really, I was inspired by it by talking to David Lieberman, and basically this idea of one payment to support all the prep work it takes to do a performance, and then a second payment for the performance. And the first payment, you know, comes 90 days before the performance to support the work getting the marketing material together, work getting the tech writer done, work getting rehearsals and travel organized.
What is Dance USA doing?
Well, we're having conversations with the agents panel and the presenting panel to come up with language. And I think everybody's really shifting, like we're really shifting, like that's where it's gonna have to go. Because what happened this past year is, you know, artists were canceled mid-tour, had to go back, and presenters asked their ticket donors to, you know, can you donate tickets? Can you do that? And the artists didn't participate in, there were some good presenters, but mostly nothing happened for those dates that did not play.
I mentioned in one group conversation that, you know, so many, the foundations, the big ones that are doing massive investment in this, I think they have leverage over this, and I think they actually do look out for the artist, and the presenters have to sign clauses, the non-discrimination clause, to accept money from the Mellon Foundation. If there's something that they could strong arm into an agreement that says in order to take money from us, you have to be in agreement with the artist on some sort of whatever we want to call this. But they have a lot of leverage, and if they can say, you can't participate in our program unless you participate this way, maybe there's some way that can be made.
I think there's going to be
sorry, go ahead, Margaret.
I think there's going to be a huge shift. And, you know, I've been talking to presenters who want to do something where they have to do the distance seating. And, you know, I said, okay, well, we could maybe do a 5 o'clock show and like a 9 or 9:30 show on the same day. If you have to, for the same price, if you have to limit your audiences. I think the foundations, at least the ones in New York, have been incredibly amazing. I mean, how they've stepped up what they're doing. They're really helping the artists, and asking them to help the artists via the presenters, I think, is something that can be done for sure.
Margaret, I'm interested in the Dance USA conversations. What are the presenters saying?
They're the ones that are on the call are working with us to get it done. They realize it. I mean, here is the crux of the whole thing. Without the artists, they have nothing. I mean, if they're, you know, if they want these artists to survive or to be able to afford to tour, they're going to have to, you know, it can't be all about them. So I think everyone's going to have to work together to support each other so it can work. And by the way, I was told about a book this morning by Sandy Garcia, who I think is the best looking book. It's called The Death of the Artist, how creators are struggling to survive in the age of billionaires and big tech. It's published by Henry Holt and Company, and the author is William Deserwitz. I think they're going to put it into the chat. I think Ian's
we'll put it in the notes that go out.
And I think that book really will help people understand that artists need to be paid for their work. It looks like it's very elegantly done. I want to plug one more book, and it's, if you haven't heard about Caste, Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner. She has basically explained how the American caste system has worked. She ties in what India has done and what Germans and the Nazis. It's just like an incredible book. It happens to be the book of the month for Oprah. And I think, you know, we haven't touched yet today about Black Lives Matter. And, you know, I think all of us have to do some big work on that personally with our companies staffs and with the companies. And, you know, we really have to dig deep. And I think now is a good time to dig deep. And regarding how we pivot during this time, you know, I hope if Congress sorts itself out, there'll be a second PPP. I know we all need them. Klobuchar has that, you know, SOS bill, and I think Charlotte Lee organizing all of the agencies to, you know, campaign Congress. I think Charlotte Lee is a super bright light in the field because she really brought all kinds of agencies together. So, you know, I think we all have to find little ways to pivot. It's a great time to reorganize things, relook at your artists, see what else they can do. They're all capable. You know, can they give a lecture? Can they, you know, are there other things that they can do? Can they do an iPod, you know, an iPod talk? I don't know. Also, take some free classes, EDX or Coursera, and get some skills you want to learn more about for free, college, and spend some time doing that. We're trying to focus on what the world's going to look like after the pandemic and be really ready for that. And you know, regarding financial, you know, what I'm telling everybody, if you can pay your rent and have food, I mean, that's what you can expect this year. I don't think there's a lot of money to be made. I just don't think there is. And it's sad and it's hard, and we have to keep emotionally healthy. I think that's the other thing. And the way we're going to do that is talking to each other. That's really, you know, we're going to help each other.
Great, thank you. And I love seeing all the resources that people are putting in the chat. And I do want to recognize Charlotte Lee and thank her. She couldn't be here, but she was a great partner in setting this up, and thought it was important that we were having this conversation. So I don't see anything else in the chat, but I want to continue along the thread. And if I, as a presenter, I'm going to touch the third rail a little, it's okay. I'm willing to do it. So, because, you know, we talked a lot when we were preparing about commissioning being one great way forward. We talked about something that Ian and I are trying to do, which is exactly what was pointed out: get restricted foundation dollars that no other body can say, well, we need it for this. If it's restricted from a foundation to do a project with an artist, then it's got to go to the artist, and that's how we can hopefully start to do some projects. So we're looking at things like that. But admittedly, I've also been frustrated on certain of these calls where I've, you know, seen the presenter colleagues who don't understand that streaming isn't free and all the rest. So beyond the commissioning and educating people, is there anything else we can do? I think this word pivot is really important to help agencies pivot. You know, where can those of us who understand that streaming isn't free be to explain it to our colleagues? What else can we do to help with this pivot? Is there anything else we can do? Just fundraise my face off, right?
Well,
yeah, that's a good idea.
I mean, I always think there's some education projects. Some of my dancers and some of the companies are teaching and making some good money for them, and I'm happy for them. It doesn't. I'm not involved with that part of it, but you know, I think we have to get very busy with Washington. We have to fight for the PPP and the SOS. We've got to get everyone we know out to vote, because if the election doesn't go well, there's nothing more to talk about. I really feel if we have a second term, that's it. We're done.
Margaret, before you were saying you were looking to the future, what it's going to be like post-pandemic. Can you give us some insight into your thoughts on that?
I think we have to look at how we're dealing with marketing our artists. I think, you know, we have to, you know, we have to look at art through a new lens. And I know that after September 11th, I looked at some performance pieces and they affected me quite differently after I had lived through September 11th. And I think through this pandemic and Black Lives Matters, I think we really need to look at our work differently. And then how we're positioning it in the marketplace. And, I know a lot of the bigger presenters are so worried about the Broadway because that's how they make their money. But I've also talked to some other presenters who said to me, listen, if you're willing, if we can get the theater open, and if you can come, if we can let you know 3 or 4 months ahead of time, would you be willing to do something? And I said, of course, if the artists want to. And the other is really regional. I have companies that are based in San Francisco, California, Vancouver, Milwaukee, Pennsylvania, and New York. So a lot of presenters are thinking that they're going to look regionally, to get things started. And for the safety of the artists, so they don't have to fly, that sounds like a really great idea. So I think all of us have to just be ready and willing not to have it done the way it used to be done, because it's going to be done differently. And the artists, it's time for the artists to be as close as they can to their agents, so we can sort through stuff. They'll have ideas, we have ideas. It's really a pollination.
I think the audiences will look different as well. I mean, it's not like one day everything's going to be safe. And I think as people kind of drizzle back into the theater, it's going to be younger people predominantly. And so the makeup of the audience, age-wise, is going to be really effective.
Great. Thank you both. Okay, so we may run a little over if people have to go, but I have one more question in the chat from Martha that I want to get to. I think everybody can see it. Martha, I'm happy to have you unmute and pose it, or I can just go. I think I'll make the first comment.
Yeah, my only concern was about colleges and universities for those of you that are listening by phone. That's such a big part of our marketplace. I'd love to hear from those of you who are on campuses. What are the shocks going on your campuses? And I'm concerned about the survival of that element of our marketplace.
Yeah, so I know there are other presenters on the call. I'm certainly happy for anyone to chime in, but being that I'm sitting here on a college campus, I'm glad to start out. I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. This year, I think you're absolutely right to be concerned, at least. And I think it's also important to point out that one of the things that's become stark for me is the differences between a private university and a state university. I think the privates are going to have a different approach based on how they choose to proceed. As a state university, we're governed by SUNY and the governor's office. All of our reopening plans took months of do it and change it and do it and change it, and it had to get approved all the way up to the governor's office. We are going to do a very limited reopening with about 800 students. We normally have about 4,000. And the 800, and I'll get to this in a minute, because we're conservatory based, 50%. We also have a great school of liberal arts and sciences, but a lot of the students that are coming back are those art students, the makers, who it was felt Zoom would impact the education too heavily. So that's the good news. The arts kids are coming back to campus to do their work. Our work as the Performing Arts Center this year is 100% in support of them. The best way that we're going to be there for external artists, agents, and our industry partners is to fundraise restricted dollars and try to bring back some residency and some commission. So I think, yeah, on the state side, we're going to be heavily dedicated to the educational mission of the college, and that's going to take us out of a lot of the things we normally do until we can fundraise to bring some residency back. So that's the tough side of the sword. But I think the positive side of the sword is that we're not going to go out of business, because we are supported by a state university. I mean, I guess I can't say unequivocally not, but it's certainly not, you know, because anything could happen with the state budget, but
Yeah.
we've been prioritized to stay here. It's not in the mind of the state to cut at least this performing arts center. So from the perspective of purchase, I think, yeah, this year it's gonna affect the marketplace because we're not gonna be able to do what we normally do. But if we get this year right, we'll still be here. Whereas I can tell you that if I was the director of a private nonprofit looking at the numbers I'm looking at, I wouldn't be coming to you from the theater right now. Any other university presenters?
Seth, I would like to make comments as well.
Please.
So I'm from Lieberman Center for Performing Arts, which is a state-run college, CUNY, sort of similar to what Seth's university is. It's been a battle for us to sustain ourselves because the CUNY right now is really leaning towards academia. So last year we had a tremendous fight to keep the performing arts alive, and we won, but it was a full-time job. So in the 60s, I'm a senior presenter. University's mission was to present cultural events. Now, it's all about academia. So, Seth, we'll have to rethink. For example, we have great facilities. We're going to have to make them available to people like Margaret to produce shows. We're going to have to totally change our approach slowly, because I don't know whether we're going to win the fight of keeping outside productions coming to our center. As it is, Lieberman College gives very limited subsidy to these. So I need to do a lot of fundraising to make this possible. And our staff is to bare minimum 4 people running $3 million budget. So from our point of view, the state university's missions are changing. And people like Margaret and other presenters need to realize that we are fighting for you.
Yes.
But if we may lose this battle, you know, totally.
We may, but I think there's a couple of positive ideas in there, and things that I've been thinking about is, as Eva said, I think we should open our spaces when we can to work in progress, work that can be done. The spaces are an asset that's just going to sit there if we don't put people in them. So I think we should do that. I also think you know, we as presenters have to reshape our thoughts around fundraising together. You know, when we prepped for this call, we talked about more regionalized touring given travel restrictions and how could we get to that. And maybe that's something that we need to have a subgroup about, where, you know, let's go to Mellon together and raise money for a, you know, something that just travels, you know, our boroughs or what have you. I'm making this up as I go. But I think it's all the more reason for us to think outside of ourselves and not think of each other as competitors, but try to figure out how we can partner to just, you know, bring the artists back. Margaret, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there's a silver lining to everything, and we have to find the silver lining here. And I think the fact that, you know, the Black Lives Matter, I think there's going to be a lot of art that is about social justice, which a lot of the main foundations say they're pivoting towards. And, you know, let's get some stuff happening, you know, up in the Bronx. Let's make that happen. And get the students involved, really involved. They want to be involved. Let's do something that they're interested in. And so, you know, it's dire and things are shifting and it's a lot of hard work. But I think, you know, there is life after the pandemic, and, you know, we might not be the money makers that some Broadway is, but I think there's a way to still create for a college campus that makes it worthy of being on the college campus, and for them to try to figure out a way to do it. I do.
Thank you. So I want to close on two things that I hope are hopeful. First, just a little piece of information, and then a question to close us off, which anyone can respond to. So first, I know we've talked a lot about, as we prep, that so many of the presenters are reliant on Broadway and what's going to be with Broadway. So I can tell you all in secret that we've had more asks to tech Broadway shows here since the pandemic started than ever in my time here. So they are still trying to figure out how to do it. And I think we're gonna, that'll be one of our first steps into being a part of bringing work back. So I think that's hopeful. The question I want to close on is, so we are here on a college campus. As I said, our role is going to be different this year. Certainly in the fall, our theater is used as classrooms, but it is those young makers who are coming back, and we're going to, as a Performing Arts Center staff, have more of an opportunity to help their education than ever, because we're doing everything we can. I'm teaching, Mara Ruppner's our marketing director is teaching, Christy Lavard, who's on the call, who's our director of production, is teaching with members of her team. Ian is going into classrooms. The chair of arts management is actually here listening in. We're recording this. We're going to send this to her students afterwards. So what would you say to our students about how they can help us put a best foot forward for when this is over?
I would just say to shine their light, bring their view of the world to what we do. If you look at the call, it's mostly old white people. And we need a rainbow of colors. So we need the whole cornucopia of people. I mean, America's an amazing place, right? As a new whatever I am, citizen. They have to bring their best selves, and they have to influence us.
I do need to wrap us up, so I just want to give the panelists the opportunity to any final thoughts. Simon kind of already did his.
I'm going to say we're all in this together. If anyone wants to call, let's chat. Let's help each other. We're going to get through it. It's going to be hard.
Yeah, I echo Margaret. Some of the kind of buoying moments have been speaking with my colleagues who I've gotten to know better, actually. So I put the welcome mat out for that as well.
Yeah, and I would just add that I think, one of the things that's helped me as I look at our three panelists is the days of, someone's assistant calling the other assistant to set it up have been gone, and that's been great. We sort of just call when we need to have a chat. So, I've called Margaret as I'm cooking dinner, or, Simon in the morning just to check up. Alan, I try not to call in the morning because it's 3 hours earlier there. But so yeah, I think it's good just to do that. And call me if you want to. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. We're so glad just to see everybody's faces and have a conversation. I want to thank Ian Driver, who really does all the work to make this happen. I want to thank our production team who came in so we could have some fun in the theater and made us look and sound really much better than we deserve to. And I want to thank the panelists for their time and their knowledge, and all of you for being open to a conversation. We want to keep this going as a resource, and we get the topics from you. So if there's something else you want to talk about, we do these once a month. Please just write to Ian, write to me, and we'll make sure your topic gets in the queue.
Thank you, Seth, for making this available to everybody. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everyone.